I'm Colette. And no, I am not from OnlyFans. But I do have a great idea called Only Dogs, which we'll get to later in this episode on the Unmuzzled podcast.
Oh, welcome back, everybody. We've been off the air for a few weeks. We're just going to leave that hanging in the air. No reason. We just took a few weeks off. We had a nice little vacation. We went down to Cabo. It was a good time. But we are back with what we're calling Unmuzzled 2.0. Or, I'm sorry, we don't do major releases. 0.0.2. Unmuzzled 0.0.2. Which is kicking off right now. So what we're doing is overhauling the show just a little bit. We're having some fun because we got a little tired of having the same discussion about goddamn slippery slopes and how everything turns to shit with, whatever the AI thing of the week is and, all of the news. So we're overhauling the show a little bit. We'll hope you'll join us. Stick with us here. The first thing we're going to do, however, is honor the Unmuzzled legacy. And that is we cannot have been off the air for a month and not talk about some of the things that are happening in the tech world. For more on that, God, we sound so official now. I can't, we can't. We're not, all right, Aaron, what's up in tech?
Okay, so this first one stood out to me as pretty fascinating. So if you guys are not familiar, there's plenty of ransomware hacks that have been going on. You guys have no doubt probably heard of the pipeline hack and many others. But this one I thought was pretty hilarious. So there's a popular union known as the Teamsters. And if you guys, that rings some bells in your memory, that's because the Teamsters Union is the one that legendary mobster and, I don't know, mafia member, I don't know exactly his title, but Jimmy Hoffa was a part of, right? He was the one that kind of championed that union. Anyways, I guess we just found out, this just became public information, but in 2019, their computer systems became attacked by one of these ransomware hacks. And if you're not familiar what happens, essentially some malicious code gets onto your network and then encrypts all of your files. And then what happens is these hackers then say, hey, pay us some money, we'll unlock all your files and move right along. So the Teamsters, they go to the FBI and say, what the fuck do we do here? The FBI says, of course, you just pay them. We're too fucking busy. Deal with it. So they're like, okay. So I think they try to negotiate down the price. I think I read that they got it down to like 1.1 million or something like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was 1.1. Yeah.
Yeah, and then they talked to their insurance company, and the insurance company was like, "Nah, don't pay that, because that means we'll have to pay it."
Like, what was insurance going to say?
Yeah, the perfect answer. So instead, they're like, you know what? Let's just rebuild our entire systems. Forget our infrastructure that we already have. Let's just rebuild it. I absolutely love that story, and it's like, of anybody that would say, "No, fuck you, we're not going to pay you your money," it's like.
It's Jimmy Hoffa.
Yeah, it's like that. Yeah. Well, and it's run by, it's either his like son, I think, is who runs it now, James Hoffa. Anyways, I love that one. It's like the union is for blue collar workers. I believe they're now trying to get Amazon workers to join their union as well. That's a whole nother story. But that was the first one that I heard where they're like, no, fuck this. There's another option. Let's just rebuild our entire network.
So I like how the FBI was like, yeah, just pay them because it's a digital only thing. Imagine if the movie Air Force One from like 1997 with Harrison Ford. Could you imagine somebody calling up the FBI and being like, hello, Quantico. So somebody has hijacked Air Force One. They've taken the president hostage. They're asking for $5 million. Could you imagine the FBI being like, why are you fucking calling us? Just pay them. Pay them the $5 million. We don't have time for this shit. Like, they didn't even bother to send anybody or do anything.
Have you guys seen the first episode of Black Mirror with the pig?
Yes.
I don't remember what the first episode is.
Oh, it's the one with the pig. That's the one that was like, I don't know why everyone is saying this show is so amazing. I don't know that I can watch any more of this shit.
No, I don't. Yeah. You're going to have to refresh my memory.
I mean,
I don't.
I
You're going to have to refresh my memory.
I mean, it's a big spoiler alert for anybody who hasn't seen Black Mirror as an episode. So if you haven't seen it, go watch the first one. But basically, they get the Prime Minister to do stuff with.
Oh, right. I do remember that.
There it is.
Yeah.
On live television.
Yeah. I don't know how you forgot that. Yeah. On live television. So, I mean, they get people to do stuff. I don't know. At least in the Black Mirror world. But I think that in kidnappings, I do think, don't they generally advise you to just pay them?
I think it would. I would suspect so. I mean, I think it would depend on the dollar amount, right? As long as it's reasonable. I mean, if it's unreasonable, it's like these people aren't really being serious, anyways. But what's fascinating is so these ransomware hacks. I mean, the stuff that's coming out now because they're seeming like they're more and more prevalent, which is why the FBI said we can't fucking manage this. We've got tons of these happening in DC. You're on your own. Is basically no one's talking about these ransomware hacks, and private enterprises are just paying them off and moving right along. Because one of the concerns was if we don't pay them, they're also then going to leak all this information on the interwebs.
Yeah, but once you pay them, what is their motivation to not do it?
That's what I haven't figured out exactly. It's like, why don't they just turn around and do it again?
Yeah, like you're not dealing with the world's most honest people here.
Yeah, for me, like, if just as someone in tech, I'm like, I kind of want to rebuild the entire system anyways and try to do a better job knowing that this could be the outcome.
I mean, so I'm trying to, I looked a few times and I've tried to find what it is that they are built on and what did they actually have to rebuild.
Dude, I'm sure it was like Windows XP.
Well, they mentioned, I mean, it's just a bunch of data records. They mentioned they even had to go in and reproduce hard copies into digital copies. I mean, so they probably had like a warehouse full of files that they just had to go in and scan and shit, which sounds insane to me.
So is there then a market, if the FBI is not going to take these threats seriously and help people, is there a market for like a private security firm to respond, like a crisis, response center?
Yeah, those exist.
No, I mean, not like the rape crisis response center, but, like, hey, I've been digitally raped. Let me call
in because our network's been raped.
I am currently penetrated. Somebody come help.
I mean, yeah, they do have those people, the digital forensics, people who deal with those types of, even the negotiations of those things. But what I was looking at here is the $1.1 million when you decide that it's basically less expensive probably to just rebuild the system, right? Because if it's a bunch of data, like how much labor is it to get some people to scan some stuff out of file? I mean, that's
if it was really
they did.
No, exactly. If it's really smart, I mean, you should probably calculate that. So it's like your malware goes and scans all the files, and they're like, this would probably take them X amount of time, which equates to X amount of dollars. Let's make it just slightly lower than that. So they're like, okay, let's just pay.
Yeah,
you got to make it a little lower than slightly lower because you got to allow for the fuck you factor of like at least 20%.
It is interesting though, just this, the topic of how often this happens that we don't hear about this. So like this is a couple years ago, which is actually kind of interesting because I think, aren't you supposed to release when your data has been compromised to the individuals that were compromised?
Oh. That one I'm not sure, but even on this one, they said that member information, all that kind of stuff, was not accessed. So it's like, okay, well, what could they have accessed? That would be of concern here. Yeah. I mean, just files that are just help them within just to operate the business.
I mean, I've had now 3 sites hacked. 2, I think we talked about one on the show. It happened again to 2 other clients, and we never had any like client data or anything of importance on there, like a couple like WordPress blogs or whatever got compromised. And so at the end of the day, it was like, okay, like just go remove the malware and try to patch the where they penetrated from. But at the end of the day, I don't know if I have no idea on the client side what they did, if they reported it to anybody. For one, I suspect yes. For another, I suspect no. But again, you're not dealing with sensitive information. So.
Yeah, I don't think anybody cares unless you leak some sensitive information.
Yeah, so it's just amazing how often this stuff is happening now. I mean, I think it's probably just the bots are getting so sophisticated, or do you think that this was like a direct
Oh,
It's probably, I don't know that it's direct. I mean, because there's been instances, I think, where some of the groups have said, no, we're not targeting like these hospitals and stuff, which is like the worst
Which just
case scenario,
accidentally
right?
happened.
It just happens, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
I mean, it's
I
like
think
maybe
if you-
hospitals are talking about it more openly, and that's why it seems like some of these industries seem to be more targeted. I don't know.
I'll bet you it's not. If I were the hackers, right, I wouldn't be like, oh, yeah, man, Teamsters, fuck those guys. Or like, St. Mary's Hospital, oh, fuck that place. It would literally just be an opportunistic thing, right? Like, oh, this place is running an ancient version of Windows. They haven't patched whatever in forever. Let's take it, So I literally think it's just anyone they can get. They're not going after specific organizations.
You guys ever get into Mr. Robot at all?
Yes.
I
On
watched
the
a little
TV
bit.
show. Yeah, that is such. I actually really enjoyed that up until a point, but like watching them actually go through and try to like attack. Like he's like, oh, this is like WPA security, and blah blah blah. It was kind of cool. Like
It was a step up from, let me guess your Wi-Fi password by knowing your dog's name.
Yeah, and I mean it's cool to see it realistically portrayed. There's another really great computer show called Halt and Catch Fire, based in the 60s, 70s. Another
That was a
great
good
show. Yeah, but I thought it was cool to watch like the hacker. Like if you guys have obviously seen, I assume. I mean, I hope you guys have seen like Hackers, the old school movie.
Yes. And I even watched it recently, and my God,
Really?
it's atrocious.
I mean, but so good. But like, it's cool to actually see things portrayed realistically, not like flying around digital 3D spaces and stuff like
That's
that.
what that was. That's what that movie was. That's Hackers.
No, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah,
that's
it's
what I'm
so
saying. It's
bad.
cool to see like Mr. Robot and see
Oh,
like,
yeah,
these
yeah.
kinds of things, and I think it helps give context like how these hacks happen. If you ever have watched that show, it's like
No,
oh,
and
okay,
it's like,
I get
well, it's
it now.
even dumber. It's just like someone got phished with an email, and they opened up the email, and they weren't paying attention, or they were like ignored all the warnings, or the stupid one where it's like, I mean, I've gone through like these IT trainings, and it's like, do not plug in a USB stick that you found in the parking lot at work. It's like, oh my God.
I actually just had a friend got phished a couple weeks ago, and one of her gaming accounts, she had, I don't understand how, but she had like $15,000 worth of real money. Well, she's Canada, so loonies and toonies, whatever they call their money, but 15 grand worth of like skins for the game. I was like, why did you have that much?
Who spends 15 grand on skin? Like nothing.
When dude, they go for like 70 grand. I don't know
What the fuck?
people do.
It's,
Yeah.
Like behind the scenes, that's like a 1-bit thing in somebody's database somewhere. That's like, oh yeah,
I know.
they got this piece of equipment.
Jones, do I need to refer to you again, NFTs?
Oh Jesus Christ!
This at least, in my mind, I'm like, this at least has a function and like a more interesting like bragging rights. If you have a skin that no one else can use.
Wait, hang on. Speaking of NFTs, my little brother called me over the weekend, and I was driving with Josh, and I put him on speakerphone. The first thing he says is, "Yo, what the fuck's an NFT?" And comes to find out, because he does Ironman events and triathlons and all that kind of stuff. And somebody had beaten an Ironman record, and was putting the record up for NFT. And he's like, I don't understand. What does that
How do you
mean?
even put the record up for NFT? Like, what do you fucking own? Like a photo?
I own
of
your
the
record. You didn't
What?
do it. I did it.
No, I own the fact that you did it. Like, or something like what?
We live in a. Oh my God, I can't.
We need to
That's
just
it.
reboot.
Yeah, we just gotta
Reboot.
rebuild the system, man.
Turn it off.
Yep.
And turn it back on again.
Tech went weird places. Right after Wolfenstein 3D, it was all downhill after that. Jesus Christ.
Oh man.
All right, so what's up with the White House here?
All right, let's move it along. Okay, so this one started off. I mean, you guys have probably seen the White House is kind of being more proactive in targeting Facebook with some of their press releases and their briefings and stuff, right? Where they're basically saying, "Hey, Facebook, you've got a shitload of misinformation, specifically COVID-19 misinformation that's harming our society, etc. You need to do a better job." Anyways, in one of the briefings, the press secretary, and I am the worst. I don't even know this lady's name.
Jen. It's Psaki. But
Jen Psaki. Fuck if I know. Anyways, this was the interesting thing. I'm just going to say this, and I'm just curious as to how you guys respond to this. So this isn't quite verbatim, but this is basically what she said. If you're banned on one social media platform, you should be banned on every social media platform.
Ooh.
No.
No.
Yeah.
And so I've read a couple.
Well, wait, hang on. Let me get back up.
Yeah, go ahead.
For some, maybe there is an asterisk for like some offenses. Then
okay. Hey
yes,
guys,
like...
we're back to our slippery slope discussion, but let's dive in. Keep going, Burkett.
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say maybe if it was like, and again, I'm gonna use the same argument we always use.
God damn it.
Yeah. If it's child porn, then maybe they lose the rights. But I think, at that point, then you're just probably talking about them losing the rights to the internet, right? I mean, people do lose their rights to touch anything with a battery in it.
All right, so let's say you post your child porn to YouTube. How can Instagram come along and be like,
not me?
Nope. Listen, man, you're in the corner. The corner hasn't changed from unmuzzled 0.0.2.
No, I mean, so how this came up was essentially, I mean, it's a little bit longer point that she was making, but it's in regards to this COVID-19 misinformation that's on Facebook, and there needing to be more rules of the road for how social networks kind of govern and manage content on their platforms. But it then means that these social networks need to maintain a block list of people that are not allowed on these systems. And how would you even verify that? I mean, then we have to go through real identity verification. And then it happens, we have the same discussion, we've brought this one up before. At what scale then does this apply? Yeah. Does this mean like if I'm starting a social network or even just like a web forum, is that a social network? I don't know. But I have to communicate with this global block list API of people that can and cannot based off of what parameters?
I have to have like
their email address or what?
Yeah. I have like a social security number that I get or something like that.
Yeah.
Like my own internet number, that would be.
I mean, obviously, this is just in a press briefing, right? This isn't in.
Yeah.
No one's proposing a law or anything on this front. But this one struck me as like really alarming.
And they walked it back literally like hours later. They were like, we didn't mean that. We just meant, there's some misinformation out there on the internet, and it would be great if that misinformation weren't on the internet.
No, and I understand that, but that to me, it's like if you're communicating on behalf of the fucking White House, right? Like have your ducks in a row at least a little bit on what can and cannot be applied within the legal system, or can and cannot be applied within how our society operates. Like what standards we hold ourselves to, like the First Amendment.
Yeah.
Yeah, like there needed to have been like a council of tech people sitting there and being like, hang on, no, that's a can of worms.
There's people who recently raised their hands.
Possible.
Yeah, bad idea.
Yeah, yeah.
In my mind, it's like it's not the same, but it's almost equivalent of like Trump being like, why don't we just open the people up and just put like UV light into their bodies?
Yeah.
Or whatever the fuck he was saying. I'm like, okay. Interesting. I know why you're approaching this idea, but terrible.
Yeah. I mean, to me, it's just, it's the White House and the government not knowing how the internet works or something. I mean, that's just.
But that's the concern.
Possible.
I mean, that's where, for me, it's just like, that's where ideas for laws come from, right? Or can come from, right?
I also just, and this is gonna piss a lot of people off. But I also think that COVID-19 is not the hill to die on for this stuff, right? Because if you're talking about misinformation, the slippery slope thing always applies. Like, all right, so we start with COVID, and then all of a sudden people talking about the 2020 election, if they don't say the right thing, now it's misinformation. Like, somebody who thinks, I think, they could go online and say, oh, I think there was a bunch of voter fraud. And, you could easily see a label getting slapped on that saying, nope, voter fraud. Science says that, not voter fraud. blah blah blah. So now that person is on the quote no-fly list for the internet.
Yeah.
Right. And then it's the next topic and the next topic. And this one, like misinformation, a hill to die on would be like if we were in, I don't know, World War II and people were posting troop movements, right? And they were like, oh, we're gonna attack here. That would be something where I would say, all right, the government probably has a vested interest in
That's not
that
misinformation.
down.
That's leaking information.
Yeah, but you see what I'm saying? Like COVID it's such a benign, yes, a lot of people have died, but compared to like a pandemic with a lethality rate of, like 80 out of 100 people dead, it just doesn't strike me as the thing to die on to trade in the Constitution for, Does that make sense?
I think it's just I think it's just opportunistic.
Yeah.
Of just looking at it and saying, there's a chance that we can get our agenda through. I mean, if we had concerns about Trump being on the platform and Trump even becoming president because of these platforms, what could we do to ensure that can't happen? Well, if we can get more control over these platforms and what can and cannot, and we're the ones that have access to the levers, not the executives and the powers that be at Facebook, at Twitter, at YouTube, etc.
Yeah.
Well, there was one episode you had recommended a podcast for us to listen to, and I did. It was about the rights, and we were talking about incitement, I think, at the time for the January 6th thing. But the idea here is that when you create this tool here, who's to say what is misinformation and what isn't? So while your party might be in control now, and what you deem as misinformation is applied, but then when the other party gets in, what do they consider misinformation? Like if you could imagine Trump being president, saying that he didn't win the election in 2020 could be considered misinformation, right? And saying that that there was no fraud could be considered misinformation, right? I mean, that is a very dangerous ticking time bomb to put into place.
No, but even
and that starts to get into censorship pretty quickly. Yeah.
And even just the real world case that we all experience, and again, I'm sorry listeners if you've heard this one before, but it still blows my fucking mind, is early on in the pandemic, there were people that were suggesting and saying, you know what, it looks like there's a good chance that COVID-19 actually came from a lab. That doesn't mean that we're blaming the Chinese. That doesn't mean that we're saying it was on purpose. Whatever. But that could be its origin story. Yeah. And that was flagged as, misinformation. People needed to be suspended and banned and blocked because it's not. And then all of a sudden, here we are in 2021, and people are now saying, no, that's totally probably what happened. And the White House needs to investigate it, and they are investigating it. And then here we are. So it's like you need to allow discourse to play out, especially when it's around something that is of scientific concern. You need to allow scientists to discover. Like science is... I listened to a debate. This was several years ago, but I listened to a debate between like two geologists one time. I think this was a Joe Rogan podcast, whatever. Anyways, and I just listened to them to talk, and you could just totally... in my mind, it just really struck me as like science is not... it's not in a solid state. It's very fluid. It's constantly moving forward. We never know exactly what all the laws are. We know what we know what we can most accurately predict now. In the future, it'll even become more accurate.
Yeah.
As we discover. So it's not a solid thing. So you can't just say, well, that's not scientifically accurate. Well, that's in this moment as best we understand it.
Yeah, I think with in that specific example too, it's a lot of people probably not even necessarily saying, I think that could have been done in a lab. It's like people who are, this is done in a lab. This is, it's conspiracy level stuff, or like, that whole plandemic thing and all of that stuff that comes out. That's where you get people marching down the streets and saying like, we got to go attack China now because of this. You know what I mean? So.
No, but that's the fucked up thing, is that there's probably going to be people that are like that. They're like, you know what, China fucking did this. Then there's other people that are more reasoned and saying, no, from a scientific standpoint and a logic standpoint, it's like, no, there's the Wuhan Institute of Virology is there. They study coronaviruses, and they do gain of function. Man. Yeah, and they do gain of function research there. No, so it's like, so they're saying it's at least worth exploring.
Yeah, I heard
you have the whole range of everyone. There's going to be the loonies, then there's going to be people that are more reasonably minded, then there's people that believe something just slightly on the other direction. You have to allow room for all of it.
I heard a great thing that I want to share with you two on a podcast a little while back. So the guy was talking about the phrase conspiracy theory and how handy that is if you happen to be the people that are in power. Because once you use that phrase, right, it automatically turns off most people because they don't want to be the lunatic fringe element, right? They just want to be normal. And so what
right.
he said to this, if you go to most people and you say to them, hey, do you think that rich and powerful people sometimes get together behind closed doors and talk about how they could change the law or structure governments and stuff to kind of help them out and, keep their companies at the top and, make their lives easy? Like everybody would say, yeah, that absolutely happens. Like, of course,
That's what lobbying is.
Yeah.
But then they add the part where the satanic ritual where they eat children and the pineal gland of the
so we're all willing to buy that, but as soon as you label that like a conspiracy theory, then all of a sudden all of us are turned off by it and we go, no, man, I'm not into conspiracy theories. But it's the same thing. It's just how you label it, right? So if you happen to be the government officials that are cavorting with Jeff Bezos or whoever, you just say, oh no, what you honestly, you think you believe in conspiracy theories? And all of a sudden everyone's like, oh, well, yeah, when you put it like that.
Yeah. That's exactly why the government called them UAPs instead of UFOs in the last little fiasco of if they were aliens or not aliens among us in those things, which I went down a deep rabbit hole. I think not aliens at this point. But yeah, that's because people were too afraid inside the government to be associated with like looking up UFOs because they didn't want to be like loonies,
Congratulations,
so they call them UAPs.
You just put misinformation on the internet and are now on the no-fly list. No more porn.
What did I say? What was misinformation?
That it's not aliens.
Oh, sorry. I said I think it's not aliens. I didn't say
it doesn't matter.
So you can't even say that.
Yeah.
Oh,
now we got to put a fucking banner on
yet.
our podcast about how people can obtain accurate alien information. Jesus. God. All right.
Well.
So, oh God, I already see the third topic. I know.
Oh, this is good.
All right.
All right. The third topic is the one I've been most looking forward to, especially as I dug in a little bit more. GitHub Copilot. Got goosebumps already. Okay, so I'll explain it for maybe the non-developers. Okay, so there's a company known as OpenAI, and they in the past have been doing AI research, and they've done all kinds of amazing things. One of the most recent amazing things they did was released an algorithm, a tool, I don't know what you call it, called GPT-3. And that's the one, if you haven't seen it going around, it's the one where you can kind of type in like an article title and then it would populate the rest of the article. Like, write me an article on Miley Cyrus and Martha Stewart cooking turkey. And then it would like write an article on that or whatever thing you wanted to come up with. And anyways, people then figured out that you could apply GPT-3 to all kinds of crazy solutions people were doing. I saw some where people were building UIs just off of saying, hey, make me a view that has a navigation bar with this logo and has scrollable content that's structured like this. And all of a sudden,
so
boom.
You've seen the Safari beta as well.
Exactly. Anyways, then it would like open up Figma and then draw that layout or whatever, right? Okay, so Microsoft at one point invested $1 billion into OpenAI, and they got exclusive rights to using GPT-3. And I'll touch on that in a second. Anyways, what then Microsoft has done with that is they leverage this tool to crawl everything that is on GitHub that's open source, which they own. Yep. And then this GPT-3 algorithm, whatever, then came up with a set of solutions and they bundled it into a tool called GitHub Copilot. The idea is, while you're writing code, this thing is kind of like an AI assistant pair programmer. So pair programming is when you sit next to another developer and you guys write code together. So that's the idea. So I'll go back to the earlier point. Microsoft invested $1 billion in this company. So this company was founded in part by people like Elon Musk and some other folks with the idea of, we're worried about private companies solving AI solutions and then just winning the entire game that is capitalism, right? Of just coming up with tools that like they can just eat everybody's lunch. And so the idea was they wanted a company that was just as invested and could do just as much research and was fully dedicated to it, that they could kind of democratize these solutions. So as they came up with solutions, they could share them with the world and the world could benefit. So I find it highly ironic that already it completely ended very quickly. The name OpenAI doesn't mean anything anymore because Microsoft has exclusive rights to this. So anyways, why I bring that up is developers now can request access to use this tool. And one of the early things already that kind of alarms me is like, if the goal is to have these solutions like democratized, now we've got Microsoft saying, here's who can and who cannot use this tool, and we'll let you know when it's ready. And that to me is like already concerning as a developer. It's like, wait, if people have better tools out there and I don't have access to them, am I just going to fall behind? Am I going to whatever? Anyway, so we can dive into GitHub Copilot from there.
Or, not to be contrarian, but maybe the reason they didn't just throw the doors open to have everybody look at it is because it's not quite great yet. Like, they want to control access to it because they're afraid that if they just let everybody in, people will see what Brian Burkett and I saw when we went to the automatic face generator and noticed like the demo ones they show off are 1 out of 1,000 and the other 999 look like fucking demons from hell.
So I watched a handful of YouTube videos on this. I think Burkett, you probably did as well. Oh, yeah. One of the interesting ones to me, I don't think this doesn't really apply if you're a developer that has day-to-day tasks, but this is an interesting scenario. This guy used GitHub Copilot to pass these like the typical interview test questions that you might get, or the pre-interview test questions. So there's websites, I can't even remember what some of them are, but there's like code challenges online. There's tons of websites that do these. And so he grabbed like a bunch of the difficult ones. He copied the description from all of them, what the inputs, what the arguments ought to be for the function you need to write, and then what the expected outcomes ought to be. He pastes that into his editor and then hits tab or whatever key it is that triggers Copilot, and then boom, in comes a solution. He grabs the solution, pastes it in, he passed all the tests. I'm like, that's fucking amazing. So in one sense, it's also like, I mean, because you could just Google this stuff and use Stack Overflow, which is a forum that developers exactly, a forum that developers share code solutions on. It's just like an automated way of doing Stack Overflow.
I mean, so first of all, it is pretty awesome when you watch people use it on YouTube videos, and they'll there's like a 20-minute or an hour-long video of them just like messing around the editor and just going like, holy crap. And it's pretty good. Since it's not available, I mean, there's some politics definitely behind everything you said with OpenAI, and I mean the fact that Microsoft only allows not just developers access to Copilot, but developers access to GPT-3. So I can't sit here and say I have a great idea for an app, and it could leverage GPT-3. I can't do that right now myself. Like, I don't have access to it. There's actually the people who work at OpenAI, I guess, have been saying like could potentially destroy the fabric of society, and they're they don't like the way that it's being used right now, I guess. I saw some videos about that, but anyway, Aaron and I ended up using another one right now called Tab 9, which I thought there were some pretty cool things in there. So that's one you can actually get for free. There's a paid version. I'm still on the free one. I think, Aaron, you're still on the free one too.
I'm still on the free one, yeah.
Right. And that one's pretty cool. So basically, as you're going through and you're typing your code, it'll help autocomplete common patterns before you've written it. Not just autocompleting things that you've already written and referencing the function name, or like common patterns like function and that kind of stuff. It literally, like, I was typing like var first, and it completed it to first name equals this, and it's like I have never referenced first name anywhere, but it got the context of what I was working on and figured that that's what the name of my variable should be, right? And so there's a couple times when I'm just like, wow, I only hit a few keystrokes here, and I was able to complete an entire feature set, or with some very slight tweaks, it was still. But the muscle memory is a little weird because I'm not used to having the code context, things pop up, the little snippets that at that stage I'm usually ignoring them because they don't know that I'm writing the variable, and so I just I'm like, wait a second, those are right. Like that is what I was gonna call that.
God, I cannot wait for the stage of life that we get to in about 10 years where, no, it'll be more than that. It'll be like 15 years where our generation has retired. Like we're out of the picture now. So it's all the kids that learn to code with this shit out here. Captain, let me pass the test by just asking GPT-3 to do the work for me. And they're going to be shipping code that, does your self-driving car and your little flying holograph machine and, fucking the transporter that's going to be invented in, 50 years. And we're just going to be all relying on that, all of it, just built by idiots.
We kind of already are.
Yeah, but yeah.
Like right now, like there's shit that's been built. Like I think that there's not a single person on Earth who knows everything about the Windows registry keys. There's like, the couple people who like have written some of that stuff who are no longer, and I think that is kind of why it's a symptom of some of the shit that we see these days that's like broken.
Well, and we already saw that. What was the issue with, was that in Delaware or Connecticut, right? During the height of COVID, where they had to hire some 70-year-old COBOL programmers to come in and maintain their systems. It's like, so just so everyone's clear, Jones is always the pessimist when it comes to future tech. I think Burkett and I are always on board with the bleeding edge.
You're bleeding edge. I'm kind of in the middle. I just wait for it to pan out, and I think you.
I'm like I'd just fucking dive in. We'll figure it out.
The first self-driving car Aaron wants to be in.
I'm already in it.
I'm not as bad as the opposite extreme, though. I mean, there are people out there that think you should still be editing your text in Vim, right? Like,
well,
I'm
yes.
not that.
So I watched a guy that was doing the counterpoints to GitHub Copilot. It's one of the more popular videos on YouTube if you search GitHub Copilot. But anyways, he gave like 6 points as to why you shouldn't use it. But one he gave was like, it's just another crutch. He's like, just like Stack Overflow is also a crutch. I'm like, fucking a crutch. I'm like, what are you talking about? This is like my water. I have to have this shit. That doesn't mean I'm a bad programmer, though.
Yeah.
No, I actually bought into that in the beginning of my career, and where it was like start every site from scratch, right? And I started off doing like WordPress sites and stuff. So I wrote everything from scratch, and like folder structures, tooling, all that stuff. And to be fair, like back then, 10 years ago or whatever, like tooling isn't as extensive as it is today. But there was a point in which I'm like, and this is before people had the concept of starter themes and shit, and so eventually just clicked. It's like, wait, that just saves me way more time to have a foundation of things. But I bought into that, and I spent a lot of hours just rebuilding shit that I already built. So my thing that I think is really cool is like, for example, I write a lot of different languages and stuff when I go into things, and like I have to remember, how does PHP do a for each loop again? How does JavaScript do a for loop? What's a for loop in Liquid? Or when I'm working in Jekyll, all kinds of shit. And it's like, why do I have to remember? Like, I could move so much faster if I could just see the structure. My brain goes, oh, yep, that's right. That's how it goes. And, for common patterns, that's a basic example, but there's like really high level things that like I solve a lot of times. And I think that the future programmers could benefit from things that people have already solved. Like a lot of projects, you end up reinventing the wheel that other people have already solved, and you could probably pull them in with a couple keystrokes.
That's how you get
Autopilot.
949 node modules in your little tiny marketing website.
That's true.
God forbid you rewrite that 2-line wheel for isThing array. Fuck no. You're going to install the isArray package from NPM.
Mm-hmm. Which has 17 dependencies that all have 17 dependencies. Yeah. God. Right. But so do you feel like, so I've never trusted auto-generated code. The auto-generated code is not new, right? Like this is not a new concept. This has been since like Dreamweaver and like Front Page and that shit way long ago, right?
That was always the worst.
What Dreamweaver created.
I think
it was tables on tables on tables.
Which is funny because if you go look at a modern website, like if you pull up, like your average I don't know, news website, it's a CMS generated cluster of shit. There's like div. It's just like a pyramid of divs all the way down.
Especially, and they're all a lot of times now it's just like random IDs and stuff that doesn't make any sense.
Yeah,
and all
it's
that.
all
that's
Facebook source code.
That's different.
Yeah,
that's obfuscation.
But there's like divitis is what we were told it was called in school, to have too many divs all over your page.
Let me ask you a question though. So we've got GitHub Copilot now, and okay, let's say I buy in and I'm like, all right, cool. I want to be faster. I want to get my job done faster, so I'll use this thing. Somewhere on the spectrum between, like Vim guy writing in a terminal, no autocomplete whatsoever, like has to type every single character by himself, doesn't use Stack Overflow, and the other opposite end of that spectrum, which is basically like fucking Jarvis from Iron Man, where I'm like, hey, Jarvis, I'd really like an app that is a Twitter client that does this one thing better. Can you build that for me? And he goes off and does it, right? Like, where on that spectrum do you draw the line and say, like, all right, past here, we are now entering, like, Wall-E territory, where we're all just fat organic slobs relying on machines, and we no longer have any expertise whatsoever?
I think we're close. I think we're a lot closer than people realize.
That's what concerns me.
Dude. Well, no, but here's the thing. There's always going to be tinkerers like us that are just like, no, I really want to dive in and understand what's actually happening here. But there's so many use cases that, someone, sitting at their home could be like, you know what, I have this idea for this app. Let me plug it into this tool, and then boom, there it is. Now, that doesn't mean that that's all of a sudden a massively scalable solution. That's going to be the concern, is like if something like that all of a sudden takes off, and then God forbid what kind of leak or vulnerability was in that thing. But
have you seen TikTok?
The Chinese backdoor. That's a different vulnerability.
I mean, honestly, if Siri can listen to other people's really bad ideas, like, do you know how many times I've been asked to sign an NDA and I have to go meet somebody and sit down and they pitch me their app idea and I say, that's a to-do list app. There are several of them. You don't need to build this. Or like, have you heard of Zapier or if this then that, because you could string that together in an afternoon and call it a day and solve your specific problem.
Yeah, but if there's an assistant where you could just type that in and then it just and it just wired up all these things.
Let me have my afternoon free.
No, exactly. That's fantastic. I think it's fantastic. But
right, I get that you two are tech optimists, but I think we can all three of us agree that the assistant that does that will not be Siri.
That's correct. All right, so here's an interesting one, and I thought this is where you were going. So at one of my prior jobs, I had an engineer that had been coding for well over 20 years, and he was the guy that only used Vim, right? And then I had other guys on my team that were using JetBrains and Sublime and VS Code and whatever, right? And they were using all the tools, all the fucking extensions, all the node modules, all the bloat that you could. And there was like a trade-off. There was a trade-off, right? So the guy that did Vim, he just was too slow. Right? He was too slow for you to throw onto a critical project that had a critical deadline. But he was excellent at like the maintenance sustaining work, where all of a sudden something showed up and the guys that were on the bleeding edge are like, I don't know what's going on here. And he's like, well, I know all of the inner workings of JavaScript. I know exactly how set interval and set timeout differ, and all the, I can talk to you for an hour about that. And he could dig in and figure out exactly what was fucking going wrong. Right? And it's like you need both. You do. You need both of those types of people.
Yeah. There's juniors who get stuck all the time and can't dig themselves out of a hole because they haven't, figured out that hole yet, and so you need somebody to be like, shine a light and be like, this is how you get out of this problem.
Yeah. But I never met a like one of those juniors or whatever that wasn't curious about, okay, now what actually was going on and how do I dig in? Now, that's obviously a bias because of how you hire and all that kind of stuff. You should hire for that kind of curiosity, right?
Right. But I don't know. To be honest, in my career, the faster I can execute shit and get it live and the faster I can be to 0 milliseconds, right? Or what do they call it? 100 milliseconds in the real time, the faster I can move. I mean, I feel like what I actually think is people like us will actually be able to produce a a massive volume of work and of a higher quality, because a lot of times you're building a feature set and you're like, well, okay, this feature set should really have X, Y, Z features, but I only have time for X and Y, and Z isn't making the cut. Now I could probably do all of it and then some in a simple feature set, because it's just going to be some simple keystrokes and some comments and some rejiggering of some code. And it's like, all right, well, that's done now because I already know all of the problems that can arise from it.
See, I think it's going to go a different way. I think this AI generated code is going to become the norm, right? And then when we are 60 or 70, we're going to be the fucking COBOL guys that get called in to be like, hey, this isn't working. Can you come figure out what the fuck is not working about this thing? Because nobody here actually knows anything about programming.
Do you know what a set timeout is? You're in. No. Yeah, we'll see. But I think it's cool. I've requested GitHub
cool.
Copilot. I'm waiting for it. So
I'm not like, fuck you, don't make cool things. I'm just saying maybe we should also explore how humans can continue to develop their own expertise instead of relying on machines for everything. We just lost Aaron. Yeah, well,
jinx.
I guess he was like, well, fuck it, I'm done with my segment.
Did his Tesla just take him down?
I don't know.
We were talking about AI and all of a sudden he's gone.
Is he texting? I wonder if his internet died.
He was kind of glitchy a little bit, wasn't he?
Huh.
Did he text us? Well, I have a fancy new Stream Deck here that I probably should have some hold music on, or some elevator music that I could play.
Yeah, let's see if we can get Aaron back.
Give this a second here and see. I mean, to be honest, there's a lot of things broken about. Oh, he's back. There's a lot of things broken still. All right. Is this the real Aaron coming back, or are you an AI version of Aaron?
This is the real McCoy.
All right. Well, I think let's have some fun.
Yeah, I'm for it. So we are introducing a new segment on the show, and we're calling it the Single Comma Club. The Single Comma Club talks to people like us. We were kind of sitting around and we were thinking, man, there's a ton of podcasts that talk to guys like Elon Musk and fucking whoever runs Google now, Sundar Pichai, and, Gruber's got all the fucking Apple executives that are billionaires and talking about Apple stuff. Wouldn't it be cool if you could talk to some people that were more like you or us, the folks that aren't billionaires yet? And specifically, we thought, we would talk to people that kind of do what we do. We write apps, we write internet stuff, have a good time, see if we can learn anything from their experiences. And we thought, who should we start with? Well, we tried to reach out to the founder of YouPorn and RedTube, but they were unavailable. They'll be in a subsequent episode of the show. So what we did is we reached out to the founder of a little app called CodeKit. Now, I know what you're thinking. No, not me. We talked to the guy who stole my name and created a QR scanning app for iOS with my name. Kind of got the lay of the land from him and his story. So Briquette now has that interview queued up. What we're going to do, and this is probably going to not work very well at all because it relies on very, very specific timing and expertise from the three of us to make it work. We are not known for that, as Aaron just proved with his little vacation from the show. So we'll see how this goes. But Briquette, let's play the first thing.
Well, I want to point out that we the last episode that we did was, I think, the live episode where he was a sponsor unbeknownst to him, thanks to one of our sponsors who paid for that. He subsequently, I think, stopped. He terminated the app, right?
Yeah. Now you're ruining it. We got all that in the interview. You got your fancy soundboard. Hit your fucking fancy soundboard.
Well, okay. So you just want me to go straight into the first one? Here it comes.
Yeah. Lay it on me. And before you built the app, it sounds like you built it because you had a problem that you were trying to solve, that was actually a problem for you. So were you scanning lots of codes or, QR codes or what's the deal there?
Well, I used to work at a public school. This is before I got my new few jobs in iOS development, I used to work at a public school as an IT guy, and we used to always do asset management. So it did present a bit of a problem there back when I was working there, because we had to literally go around and find every single device in the school. We had to go on the back of it, and they're all most of them iPads, so they're most in cases. So you got to take the case off, and you got to find the serial number. So I thought,
Got it.
A good solution to that might be barcodes. And if we put barcodes on it would be good to just go scan them and have them log. So I thought maybe that could be extensible to maybe some businesses that do stock taking, that sort of thing. And yeah.
And okay, so that's Zane Carter. You're hearing Zane from Australia, and like I said, he developed this QR.
Wait. Time out.
What?
Jones, how's the weather in Australia? That must have been a hell of a trip.
I don't even.
I'm here with the dad jokes. Don't worry about it.
Is that your way of finally announcing that you and Amber are having a child?
What? No.
Okay.
Congratulations, Amber.
I'm just gonna tell Heather that Amber is pregnant then, and we'll see how that goes.
Beautiful.
Oh God. Anyway, so Zane lives down in Australia and is a self-taught iOS developer. So just like us, no formal training. And he kind of got into it around 2014, built this app called CodeKit, put it on the store, and it scans QR codes. That was the reason that he made the thing. And then I asked him, well, how did you do any kind of market research beforehand? So Briquette, second clip. So I think it is valid. Before you built the app, did you try to reach out to any, schools or like the school you came from, or, find a customer for that before building the app?
Yeah, that's something I've probably learned from building this whole thing, is really nailing down your customer.
Yeah.
I had a bit of a broad idea of who might be using it, but no real solid definition. All of the sort of interaction with users I did have was done through Airport, if you've heard of Airport, which is sort of a place where you can list your iOS betas.
Okay.
I had about 200 beta testers on there, which is more beta testers than I've ever had in any of my previous apps. So Airport's a pretty good platform if you want to get lots of users really quickly.
Yeah.
And then I had them, voluntarily give up their email addresses, and I would email them every week or so, what's going on in development, what do you think CodeKit could benefit from? Yeah.
And what was did you find that feedback valuable? Was it a good resource, or would you not do it again?
I would absolutely do it again. It wasn't the best example of feedback for CodeKit because the people testing it weren't businesses, they were just regular consumers.
Got it.
So maybe the target audience and the people that were testing it didn't match.
Yeah.
But it's definitely a very valuable resource.
Okay, good. So my question for you two is, have you ever thought of a customer? Have you ever done like a formal marketing plan for anything that you have shipped?
For Muzzle, I just thought of you guys.
This is valid.
So that works.
Fair. You texted us. You're like, "Hey, is this a problem?"
I just went, "Is this funny?" And everyone said yes, and then we shipped it.
So like that's the advice I have given people for years, right? Is find a problem that you have and solve it. And if you have that problem, other people probably have that problem. And in this case, it sounds like, that didn't quite work out for Zane because he did identify a problem that he had at the school he was at. I don't know. What do you think?
I think there's several fascinating pieces here for me. So I think first one is he realized himself he had the problem, right? I actually think that's very critical, first and foremost, because you need to be passionate about what you're working on, right? So if you are passionate about solving that problem that you have experienced, that should exist then as you continue to build this thing or this business or whatever it is. That's like the first thing. So I think that's good, right? The next one is like he did discover, this is a problem. I think this is a problem probably at other facilities. I don't think he's wrong there. But the question is then how do you capture that audience? Right? How do you actually go find them? How do you, what's the best way to then reach out to all these other schools and institutions or whatever that would have the same problem? How do you even find that? That's where then, you got to move into marketer mode and get good at online advertising or whatever it is, right? That's the other one.
Yeah.
And then go ahead, Burkett.
I was just going to say that, like, you're talking about marketing there, and I think that there is something to be said about just doing stuff, because I do sit in a lot of rooms where and talk to a lot of people, being in the startup world myself, that people like to do way more research and really, really validate things and try and do personas and all this stuff. And I think there is something to be said to just executing as well. I think you got to move both chess pieces down the board at the same time. You do have to, we have good formats for that now, right? We have A/B testing or like doing all kinds of things to validate and verify your idea and your solution to that idea or to that problem that you're trying to solve. So at the end of the day, I do like sometimes like just start writing things. Like I've built a to-do list app for myself, and I thought like this could someday be an app for somebody else, but at the same time, I don't really care. I'm building it for myself, and I showed it to the people who then wanted to use it, and I ended up not doing much with it. But like at the same time, I solved my own problem. Yeah. So I don't know.
Yeah,
I kind of like the idea of just getting started.
Yeah, the other thing too for me that really, I don't know, is intriguing here is that I think a lot of people stumble into entrepreneurship in kind of two ways, right? One, you do it from the business side, right? Where you have a really good understanding of how businesses operate, what needs to happen operationally for a business to be successful. That means, okay, we have a product. Well, is that a physical product or a digital product? And we understand marketing and finances and all that kind of stuff. But then you have the other end, and I think this is where Zane falls in, and I think this is where I typically fall in too, is more you fall into it because you're an inventor, right? You just like making shit and solving problems that you encounter along the way, right? It's so typically that's someone that has an engineering mind, whether that's again software engineer or industrial engineer or whatever that is. And so as you invent things, you have to then figure out, am I doing this because I'm just passionate about creating, which is generally me, and then which ideas that I do invent are the things that I want to latch onto and then turn into a business, and then I got to change gears. Yeah. How do I then approach this idea differently so I'm successful? So it sounds like he's already going down that approach with, or what he's learned from this.
Before I think to encapsulate that idea, it's like you need both Jobs and Woz. If you're an inventor, you either need to find a way to become partly Jobs, right? Steve Jobs and steer things. Or if you're Wozniak, or if you're Steve Jobs, you need a Wozniak. You need somebody to invent things for you. And sometimes you can be both, and you don't need to be, you obviously as you grow a company or grow a business or grow an app, you can hire people to fill some of those roles. But that is, for a software company, those are the two ingredients. I mean, you need inventors who are passionate about the problem that they're solving, and you need somebody who actually knows how to turn that into a functional business.
Cool.
Right.
So Aaron, your point about being passionate about the thing and that being a required quality, apropos, because it is true that Zane has taken CodeKit off the App Store now, and I asked him why. So, Briquette, hit that next button.
What are we on, 3?
Sure.
Yes.
So now, if I understand correctly, you have plans to just take it off the App Store. Is that right?
Yeah, it's off the App Store now.
So why? What's the reason behind that?
Well, it's not something I really had the time to maintain, and although it's got a few users that I assume are using it because they've paid for the lifetime upgrade, which is pretty impressive.
Yeah.
But the user base is not really matching who should be using it. I have plans with other features like remotely sending barcodes from the iPad app to maybe a Mac app that corresponds to it. So you could have a fleet of iPads out there all sending codes to some central location.
Yeah.
But I didn't really want to invest any more time into it with what ended up being such a small user base.
So when did you launch the app?
Late last year.
So like late 2020, December?
Late 2020, yeah.
Okay, so it's been like 7-8 months?
Yeah.
Okay, so I guess my question is, and you'll have to forgive me because I don't know much about QR codes and the libraries involved and the maintenance, but it seems like, the maintenance on that app would be a little lower than some other apps. So why not keep it around and go after, business customers, see if you can't find a niche for it? Why just pull it down?
Yeah, well, it's not something I really had, I guess, the motivation to keep going.
Gotcha.
It's hard to keep motivation on personal projects, especially when they don't bring in much money.
Yeah.
And I think the added variable that it's, barcodes, not many people are really interested in barcodes, not the most exciting thing in the world.
Yeah.
Makes it a bit tough to keep developing those new features. And although it ended up pretty good, there were a bunch of bugs to do with SwiftUI that I won't get into. But SwiftUI was in a bad state when I started making it, so a lot of things ended up breaking with iOS 14 and 14.x being released. So.
Yeah, so I mean, to me, it just sounds like he, wasn't interested in the thing, and when it didn't take off and become a rocket ship right away, he had other ideas that he wanted to tackle, which I don't think is bad, because he gets on later and talks about his next app and what he's working on now. And I think, Aaron, from my experience, you have to be passionate about what you're building. Otherwise, you're just not going to, you won't sit down and buckle down and get it done.
Yeah. No, you got to live and breathe it. I mean, first and foremost, you have to want to see this thing that's in your head exist, right? And you have to spend all of your time working to getting that to exist. And then once, maybe you get to 90% of it existing, you got to then dream up the next iteration of, okay, now what does it look like? And then pursue that dream. And it's this constant, it needs to be this constant cycle of dreaming and executing and dreaming and executing. And if you're not caught up in that, then move on to the next thing.
So would you guys have made the same choice to pull it down versus, just kind of leave it run?
Well, I was going to say, besides being an after-school special and saying, go after what you're passionate about and stuff, there's some practical things here. Like, I think, from a business standpoint, if he was making more money with the app than the cost to run it, then the choice should be obvious. Just keep it up. Don't do anything. Don't even maintain it. Just, because there are certain people like that. One little app may have solved something. There's a ton of little. I have probably 1,000 apps installed on my iPhone, but there's some that are done by little indie developers that have little bugs in them and kind of suck, but they solve that need better for me than something that's bigger or whatever. And so I think part of it is if it made sense, he probably should have left it online. You never know when you have a resurgence or the ability to maybe pivot, right? If you have motivation later on.
Yeah.
Unless there are times where it's like if you are putting in too much work and you aren't making any money on it. But if he's also, it sounds like he was in school, so this is like a great thing to have in your portfolio to show people and show that it's still live and let your potential employers purchase it or download it and test it out. But I also curious in the fact that he did it within the last 7 to 8 months, because I feel like QR codes scanned from the iPhone app itself well before that. So it sounds like he was doing barcodes, right?
Well, it's different. Yeah, I mean, he adds another subset of features that are beyond what you can just do just with the operating system. But that is a giant struggle, is that you are competing with a feature that is built into the operating system. Yeah. I think, just a side note really quick, I did find it interesting that at the beginning of that last clip, he mentioned he's like, he didn't sound exactly sure that how many people were using it. He's like, but there are some people I think that are using it because they paid for it. And it struck me, I'm like, so this is another CodeKit app that has no fucking analytics in it? Like, well, hey, if we're all concerned with privacy, good on you. But another one, all right, this one struck me also, and this struck me the first time I heard it. Yes, I've listened to this now twice, but the first time I heard it too was he mentioned that there's people using it, but not the people he intended or not the people he wanted. That one ignoring the passion discussion that we were just having, that one also sounds a little bit of alarm bells, because I've fallen into the same issue too of not listening to the customer enough, right? To understand what should I be doing next. What it's not just about solving my problems now once I have other customers using it. It's also about solving their problems. And I just saw this video, I don't know if it leaked or whatever it was, but Jeff Bezos did a talk to Zappos when they first came on board, and he had these 3 points of things to focus on. The first one was be ruthless about customers, right? And that's again an area where I admittedly struggle. I found that very interesting that he called that out, that these weren't the people that he was intending to use it.
Well, I mean, there's Twitter and stuff. There's several examples of like things that they saw how Twitter was being used, and were like, oh, well, we'll just make that a feature then, right? Like tagging people, hashtags, all that stuff. All of that was user-born ideas. You know,
what I love about it though is you also got, and this is why I hate like the little meetups that you get together and you listen to people, successful people, and they're like, here's how I did it, and you can too, because you'll also get the people that are like, quote the Henry Ford thing that, you know, oh, if I listened to what my customers wanted, they would have said a faster horse, you know, and you're like, oh, that's so clever and insightful, and I'll put that on my LinkedIn profile and share it with all of my connections.
But how do you actually
I'm a
do
dick
that?
to work with.
Yeah, exactly.
Anyway, I did ask Zane if he had recommendations. You know, if he were at the conference, what would he tell other people? Looking back on the whole experience, what did he learn from it? So cue that up.
So that's 5, right?
It's 4.
Okay, good.
I told you we were gonna. Looking back on the experience, you know, what would be like your overall takeaway about the app, the process of building it, launching it? You know, you mentioned finding a customer, you know, doing a little bit of that ahead of time. What else would you recommend if somebody else is working on a side project, you know, and they're thinking about launching it, or, you know, getting close to launching it? Like, what would you recommend to that person?
Well, like I said before, I think airports are a really valuable resource. You get just random people that are interested in beta testing people's apps come along.
Yeah.
And although that might not be your exact target audience, you're probably bound to land on some people that will end up being actual users of your app. Something I've done now is Twitter and Reddit. So I posted on Twitter. I've now gained probably 20 followers for my next app.
Okay.
And then on I've got a list in my Notion pad of all the subreddits that probably link pretty closely to my next app. So I think really getting your stuff out there, getting some sort of following, whether it be on your social media, whatever platforms you can, and interacting with users is probably what I've taken away from this. That's something I didn't do before in any of the other apps.
Yep. So I agree completely. That was kind of my story with CodeKit. Having the people that used my free app is how I launched the app and got it to actually make money. I don't know. What'd you guys think? What would you add?
Well, I didn't know about the airport thing. That's kind of cool.
I'd never heard
iOS,
of that either.
Though, but yeah, that was kind of cool. I'd also toss in there too, anybody who is starting or has ideas. Indie Hackers is a great little community to join. You can talk to other people who are building things, and they have good interviews of people who they'll show like and Stripe verified how much money they've made with their app and stuff like that. So you can read kind of what they were doing, and they post updates. So that's another little good community to join as well.
I don't know. We originally pitched this segment as like, if we had to, if Zane hired us to like retool the app or redo the marketing, what would we change? What would we do different? I don't know. What do you guys think? Is the QR code just not salvageable? Can we not save that?
QR code, probably. I would just say, like, as an independent person, that's probably, unless you have a really stellar idea of what you're going to be doing different that no one else has thought of, and it's actually clever. That's just one of those things where it's just like too many people probably trying to solve that problem, including the big boys.
Yeah.
Right. So I would just probably have. It doesn't sound like he was trying to do QR codes, which I found interesting. He was trying to do barcodes, which I would then say, like, okay, yeah, technically
all kinds of codes, barcodes, QR
it's all
codes,
kinds. It's
everything.
But that's not a native feature of iOS or any other thing, right? To scan barcodes. That's
true.
So that's where I would say, okay, there's something there. Like you could really solve that specific problem. But then I think that he's looking into he has to think through who's going to be using this scanner. Like he said, people aren't really the same users aren't his target audience, right? Yeah. And so the question is, who are these people and why are they using barcodes then? Are they using it for personal inventory? And they may have found a tool like they didn't need all the inventory tools. They just needed a way to create a barcode and print it up and stick it on something for their own, and goes in their own database. Like that may have been the solve, and maybe that's an easier solution. But if you don't ask people, you don't talk to them and interview your users, you're never going to know. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a fascinating one. I mean, there's a couple things. Yeah, if you're just doing QR codes, you're competing with a whole slew of applications. If you're then scanning other codes, interesting. But then if you go too far, then you're just competing with inventory management solutions.
Right, exactly.
And then there's other things that are interesting. So I worked for a company that did like conferences and trade shows, and we used tons of different barcodes. And there's tons of pieces of software that help with scanning and listing and taking inventory and all of that kind of stuff. But I think maybe there is a solution that's a little bit, targeting kind of small to medium businesses and maybe not just the large scale warehouse type management, where it is, more targeted towards libraries, or maybe not libraries. Libraries I feel like might have a solve, but schools, or I think
you might be surprised at places that don't have a solve.
Yeah, for sure. And then you mentioned, I think Jones, you mentioned in the clip that maybe didn't make it was like, laboratories and stuff like that, right? Or maybe there is some sort of home inventory solution. I've often thought it'd be interesting to scan inventory of everything that's in your cabinets. People
used to do that with like their DVD collection, or, tapes or whatever. I don't know.
It's a great use of their time.
I think you've hit on the thing that I kind of hit on, which is when I was talking to Zane, and that is that the niche he was going after was really specific, because at one end, right, you have like your private user, and they just, when they see a QR code, they scan it with the phone, the camera in the phone, and it says, hey, take me to the website, whatever. So that person's out for the app, right? They're not a target user. And then at the other end, you have like the Amazon warehouse that's got super sophisticated, probably fucking AI drone inventory management. So they're out. They're not going to use an iOS app for this. And library stuff like that is also kind of tilting towards the Amazon warehouse. So your niche is really like the club organizations or schools, churches, places that are tracking not iPads and computer equipment, because there's already solutions for that are like online. You just manage your fleet of stuff with an application, and you can control everybody's accounts and stuff. But when you have to manage stuff like overhead projectors, or like flat screen TVs, or carts and desks and chairs, when I was in school, there would be barcodes slapped on all that stuff, right? And the little numbers written on them so they could track where that equipment was. So that is the niche you're going after with this app, right? Like folks that are doing more than the guy scanning stuff with the camera, less than the Amazon warehouse. And I just don't know that niche is viable if it's easy enough to communicate.
I just think that there's room for simple tools still. Like Aaron was saying, that you do build too much, you start competing with other people. And like I could see somebody having their own inventory system, and it's like I just really need a way to create the barcodes and scan them, and I don't need all that other stuff, and that feeds into my system of tools. So
no, and even you could even do just a small little analysis of like, okay, how many schools are there in, let's just say he only wants to do an English native app. Okay, how many schools are there? I mean, you could find an excuse to believe that there is a very large market. The challenge is how do you find that audience? How do you actually get your product in front of their eyeballs? And that's always the interesting solve. And that's where, myself, I'm not an expert on online advertising. But even people like that, is like, how often are they actually going to search on Google for that solve? How are they ever going to be made aware of that problem?
Super hard, because if you think about your average like church organizer or school organizer, they're not super tech literate anyway, and they probably have their system in place, so they're not looking for replacements, right? And
so what you need to
you have to pound the pavement.
Yeah, if it were me, like the way you solve some of these challenges is you try to go up a few rungs if you can. So, okay, who runs a conglomerate of schools? Are there, school, whatever, like public school areas. Like, so for me, there's Denver Public Schools, which manages how many freaking schools? Maybe there's a way that you can just contact them, and then if you can sell them on the idea, then they can trickle it down to the 50 schools that they oversee.
It's not bad.
But you know how long it takes to sign off on a contract with a school to get that? Like, there's layers of bureaucracy there.
No. Listen, all you do is you encrypt all their shit, and then you tell them to sign the contract, and you'll decrypt all their files. Don't worry. The FBI will do fuck all about it. You'll get away scot-free. Yeah.
All right, what's up next here?
Anyway, I asked Zane what he's doing next, his next app, and how we can reach out to him if you're interested in talking to him or just interested in following him. I think he's an up-and-coming developer, so hit number 6.
You can find me on Twitter at I am Zane Carter. I'm making a new app. It's called Flora. It's going to be an app to help you manage your garden better.
Cool.
So that's what I'm working on at the moment. If you're interested in something like that, give us a follow.
Is it available to beta test yet on airports?
Yep, it's on test flight. And like I said, I have posted all those places, Twitter, Reddit's, airport. So following that same pattern.
Well, when you're ready to launch it, reach back out and we'll do a spot for it on the show, like free of charge. I mean, awesome. It only saves you $5 because our ads are $5.
Bargain.
We'll do it free of charge for you. So, fun fact, Heather keeps planting plants in our backyard, and they keep dying, and then she will go to Home Depot and buy more plants and plant them, and they will die. So I'm thinking about getting her this app to help with gardening.
Do you see the number of plants in my background here?
Amount.
Do you know how hard that is a job to water those? Okay, and you fucked that up. You just lost a $7 plant. Right, that fern is not happy anymore because you watered it on the wrong day.
Why did you spend $70 on
wait, so
fern?
Look at your background. That's why.
I have a very nice yucca plant right here, right off screen. I just don't put my ferns. I don't display my ferns, Briquette.
Yeah, guys, people want to see the ferns, man.
Okay, so
anyways, yeah, I'd be interested in that.
Yeah, so since you have to water them, you said you're very concerned with which days do you water them. Do you have a solution that manages? Do you just put it on your calendar? Do you have a spreadsheet?
No, I say these plants look like they're fucking dying and they're expensive, man. Water them.
You're ready for marriage.
Aaron gave me the thumbs up too. All right.
Anyway,
well, cool. That was a fun.
Yeah, that concludes the Single Comma Club, the introductory edition of the Single Comma Club. We're going to talk to, on a regular basis, folks that are doing cool stuff. So if that's you, or you know somebody that does, please get in touch. Let us know. We will take all comers. We're not picky, as long as you do not belong to the Trace Comas Club. We will not interview billionaires. God,
well,
could you imagine
I thought it was a little cruel and unusual punishment that you called him out on using his name. He shut down the app in response to this, and then you interviewed him on how it was to win.
Whatever.
How it was for you to win.
You built the prank site.
Could you imagine him telling
it? Site.
Yeah, could you imagine him telling his family? He's like, "Hey, I got to do an interview later." Like, about what? Oh, my app, CodeKit. Who's interviewing you? The guy that builds a different CodeKit. What?
I just want to turn down Elon Musk for a podcast interview someday. Just be like, nah, we don't talk to you.
That's a bad idea.
There's no way that Aaron would say no to that. Aaron would fly anywhere at a moment's notice. You know this.
Yeah, I'm in. I'll cancel the podcast.
Well, I think it's time that we take a little sponsor break. So we have a couple new segments, other things coming up that are kind of fun. But our ads are still exactly the same. So I have just dropped in a URL into the chat. Brian Jones is frantically pulling up a web browser to figure out what the hell he has to come up with for an ad in his sexiest radio voice possible. And to buy him a little bit more time, I guess I'll tell you that you can still buy an ad for $5. And I actually like that a lot of ads are coming from listeners these days. That's awesome. Sorry to everybody. We have a huge backlog of things. So we took a couple weeks off, didn't say anything to anybody. And that's just, happened. So if you want to buy an ad though, unmuzzled.fm on the interwebs. There's a sponsor and episode link there, and it'll take you to our Fiverr. Okay, Aaron, what is the URL?
I don't even know how to. I don't know how to say it, but the first word is minimal, and then we have ISS.
No, go to the one above it.
Oh God! All right, selection dot minimal ISSIMO dot shop.
Minimalisimo.
Is that correct?
Minimalisimo.
See, that's what I can't figure out. I'm like, minimal is simo or minimalissimo. So it's like Italian.
Like you say with the
I
Italian
like that. I'm going to go with that. Minimalisio. You got to get the
minimalissimo.
Yeah.
Minimalissimo.
You come to me on the day of my daughter's wedding. No.
I don't
So
have.
what do you think it is, Aaron?
I mean, it's the finest minimalism blankets the world has to offer.
Not bad.
Minimalistic.
So
I don't know why blankets.
now
but,
here's the thing: we can't escape the legacy of our past, even though we have moved on in version numbers. We still have sponsors that can't create websites that actually work. So when you go to that URL, what you're going to see is a giant red page of death telling you that the SSL certificate is not set up correctly and that you should navigate away from the page immediately because you're about to get hit with ransomware that the FBI won't help you with. But if you and trust me, I'm super big into security. I accepted the risk and went to the page anyway. I'm sure hopefully by the time you go there, these people will have their act together. But once you go there and you click through the giant warning of death and you land on the page, what this is it is a book, an actual hardcover book. It has an ISBN number and everything. The dimensions are here. It is a book, a hardcover book that you can order for $40. And what it is a awesome. Remember that book Apple made a while back that was like all of Apple's products and it was just like white pages and you would flip through the thing and it would be all Apple products? This is a similar thing. It's a super well-designed book called Architecture. And all it does is showcase minimalism architecture throughout the world. And Aaron, you're going to want to go here and get to the page because this is like right up your alley.
This is like way fucking up my alley.
This is like your dream house.
Yeah, I'm in love.
Yeah, this is amazing. So it's imagine that Apple book, right? Super swanky, high-end design, and all, or like you go on BuzzFeed and they're like, oh, the list of the top 37 houses you can't fucking afford because you're a poor. That is what this book is, laid out in front of you. So it's great for coffee tables, all of that. Great for if you wanted to influence the design of your house, get some ideas for how to reshape your house to kind of hopefully mimic some of this, but not really because you really can't ever do that. You know how you go to the paint store and you get like the chips, this color schemes, you come home, you paint your house those colors. It does not look anything like the houses that are featured on the fucking paint scheme thing. That's what this is. So you go there, you get a really fancy book of cool houses that you can't afford and architecture that you can aspire to hopefully one day mimic.
Aaron must really love this because there's no art on these walls.
That
seems to be Aaron's jam.
This is up my alley.
There's only one fern as well. They have one fern.
Yeah.
But they actually have some.
What's up?
I was gonna say they actually have stuff that's like in my price range. They have like a planter. Oh, it's a 3D model,
yeah.
but it's $8.
So,
I'm like, that's pretty solid.
So this is to. So I'll give a little preface here. This is actually a listener who is sponsoring on behalf of another listener. So we actually can't tag this in when we release an episode because it's going to be a surprise for them. So minimalisio.com is the other store. I think that's what Aaron's clicking through right now. And there are other things for sale in there. Minimalissimo.shop.
Yeah.
Is minimalisio.shop is where you will find other things to purchase. So a lot of things on there that probably we'll start seeing in Aaron's background.
Yeah, this
shortly,
is like right up Aaron's alley.
Dude, they have desktop wallpapers and all kinds of good. I mean, they got stuff that's just for everybody here.
Huh. This is a cool
That
place.
watch is cool. I will say.
The watch is really cool. And the backpack is pretty slick. There's a lot of good stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm for it.
I actually like that backpack too.
So selection.minimalissimo.shop. Go check them out. Buy that architecture.
And you
book.
have
Yeah.
when you hit enter, you have to go minimalissimo. Minimalissimo.
And just ignore the
hands.
security warning. It's fine.
Yeah, that's fine. And make sure you
Maybe-
put your credit card information in.
Yeah, exactly.
Stat.
Yeah, definitely do that.
The actual shop itself where you purchase, he's got a security certificate set up there.
Are
so
we
they can find. I
sure
think
that we are
was
not actually advertising the ransomware people? Or have we verified that this sponsor...
super? I don't know if we're that meta yet.
Yeah. Oh, God. All right, and that brings us to the final segment of the show, or the episode. We're introducing something called Snark Tank. Burkett.
So, Snark Tank is if you have an idea for an app, you pitch it to us, and we'll tell you if we like it or if we don't like it, and how we might go about executing it or whatever. The idea is, how many times have you guys who are developers, designers, sat around and had a conversation at a barbecue and said, "Hey, I've got this great idea for an app," and I have to sit there and nod up and down and say that's a great idea, and in my head I'm like, no, it's stupid, that's never going to happen. But you're a friend, so I can't tell you that. So I thought we'd do it on the air. And for anybody who's ever had that conversation in reverse, you're the one pitching the idea, maybe you can glean a little insights on how designers, developers kind of think about these types of products. So, shall we begin?
Yes, I believe we're hearing from Mrs. Burkett.
Yes, that would be a Ms.
Burkett's mother.
So my girlfriend is the guinea pig of this. You also heard her in the intro of the show, and she's going to pitch us her idea. Are you guys ready?
Yes. Just to clarify, Aaron and I have not heard this previously, so this is the first.
No, I have not let them hear it.
Yeah, this is the first run for us.
All right, ready?
Hi, my idea is called Only Dogs. Only Dogs is a mix between Tinder and OnlyFans, but specifically for sheltered dogs. So for example, if I were the SPCA, I would take photos of all of the dogs that need to be adopted and upload them to the platform. From there, the end user could then log on, create an account, and then choose to like, subscribe, or donate to specific dogs. And those costs would cover medical expenses, toys, blankets, you name it. And from there, you would receive updates about how the dog is doing and when the dog gets adopted. And that's my idea. And let me know how much you'd like to invest.
Totally swipe through dogs.
Would you help her record? And I was already nitpicky and giving her feedback on her idea. And I was like, I got to stop. I got to get out of the room because I'm going to keep giving you ideas. So what do you guys think?
It's like how far, I guess first, because this is our first go at this. How far do we go with this idea? Are we taking it from just like we just want to execute it? Can you actually make money from it? Like, is it feasible?
This is
to
your question.
maintain
Your buddy comes up to you barbecue and says, "I have an idea called Only Dogs. Let me tell you about it, Aaron."
Okay, so this is where I immediately go. Right? The first question I ask is like, okay, are you seeing this as just kind of like a side project, like a hobby thing, or are you actually wanting an income from this? Do you want to at least make enough money so you can offset the development time and effort to go about this? Those would be some of my earlier ones. The idea itself, I think, is pretty solid. I think there's a lot of interesting aspects to this. When you did mention Only Dogs, I was like imagining, I'm like, what the, like, I'm going to upload pictures of my dog and then people just swipe right on people's dogs that they like.
Your dog humping other dogs.
Yeah, exactly. We're doing a dog orgy meetup. I don't know. But I like the idea of the shelter dogs.
There should just be no ability to swipe left. Like, you can only swipe right on dogs. Like, all dogs are good
The
dogs.
app just deletes itself if you try to swipe left.
And it's just, yeah,
You animal.
immediately, you're wrong. All dogs are good dogs.
So, Brian, hit us from the business aspect. So it's interesting that Aaron goes right into the business, because as a designer, I immediately start asking more questions about functionality. What problems are you trying to solve? Those kinds of things. I don't usually start thinking about how much money do you want to spend on this kind of thing.
So I could totally see people using the app, right, to just kind of check out dogs, especially if it wasn't just photos, but like little videos, like little short 5-second videos or whatever. And the reason I know that is I will continually send funny Instagram dog stuff to my wife on Instagram, right? So I come across like a funny dog thing on Instagram, I immediately send it to her, and I'm like, oh man, you gotta check this out, it's hilarious. And it's like the latest one was like a blind dog discovering a puddle, right? And he's just, we don't deserve dogs. We do not deserve dogs. So I will automatically share all this stuff with her. So if there was an app called Only Dogs, and that's what it was like, hey, just have some fun when you're lying in bed at night, just swipe on some dogs and, share the ones you like, that kind of thing. I could totally see that being almost like a little gamification thing, right? That you do. The money-making side of it, I am not sure on. I don't know how you monetize that app, right? So you can donate to the dogs, which is fine, but I think the vast majority of people aren't going to do that, right? Because you can't, right?
No.
You're swiping through hundreds of dogs and you donate a dog.
That's true, right? Because you're going through a ton. There is an aspect here. So it sounds like your girlfriend, Colette, knows probably more about this space than we do, obviously, right? But it sounds like it sounds like she knows a little bit more about maybe how the SPCCA or whatever? SPCA, right, operates and some of the things that they expect, or is she not accurate there?
She just went with
Okay. Well, no, I was imagining, I'm like, because if they already have some of these listings on their site of like, hey, donate to us, I know that they're for a fact, right? You can find out which dogs are up for adoption. I think someone could probably build that app of just being able to just swipe right, swipe left on dogs you're interested in adopting, and then you can see that list at the end when you're done or something like that. But
yeah, I think that's actually a pretty cool, I think her idea was around trying to sponsor dogs who, some dogs need extra medical care. So you'll see people like they do GoFundMe's and things like that, or they try and share a story. So I think there's an aspect to that, but I don't think you'd want to do that for every single dog. And I was kind of, again, when I was hearing her talk about it and do the pitch, and then she shooed me out of the room, I was saying like, well, why don't you, like, if this is a dog that's a problem, like, should I continuously donate to this? Like, do I continuously donate to this dog after they get adopted? Like, say this dog has medical problems, am I helping offset the cost so that dog can have a home, where somebody might look at it and say that dog is too expensive to have a home and you can help that out? Or that going down that kind of route and helping the shelter dogs have a better life. But I kind of like the idea of being able to really quickly go through and find a dog that I want to adopt,
Yeah, I think there could be, I think there's potential. Yeah, I think there's potential to have multiple aspects. I think you look at like what Bumble pivoted into, right? Where they have Bumble for dating. There's Bumble for, I think, isn't there for business or something like that? If you just want to find like other colleagues.
God,
and then there's the Bumble
off
for finding a new best friend or just a friend, right? So I think, I don't know, whatever. I need a new best friend. Emphasis on new. No, so like the same thing. I could see it as being, I want to find a dog that I want to adopt. I want to find a dog that I'm willing to sponsor in some capacity. Or I want to find a dog that just needs, I don't know, it doesn't, maybe whatever. Maybe there's something else in there. So you could kind of change
what if it's
modes which you're looking through.
So there's I know that for a lot of dogs getting adopted, especially through breeders or through rescue shelters and stuff like that, they do a lot of times. Well, I know for like places like German Shepherd rescues, they want to know that the home that you're going into is qualified for a German Shepherd. So they'll interview and turn people down from adopting a dog if they don't feel like that dog is going to go into a good home. And so I wonder if you could have your own profile with like, here's the yard, here's the like whatever, and then that app can help match you with a dog based on like, hey, I need a dog that's 20 pounds.
So the dog rescue gets to swipe on potential.
This person does or does not deserve this dog.
When you swipe left or something like, or swipe right, maybe that sends an inquiry into wanting to be adopted. But then, right, because then it has to go to whatever, if it's the ASPCA or if it's whatever shelter, right, is going to say, oh, Brian Jones wants this dog. Oh man, he wants a 400-pound pit bull and he lives in a studio apartment, like that's probably not going to work well, you know.
Yeah, it's fine. It's fine. What's
Sounds
wrong?
like he definitely
I
lifts.
got ferns.
You have a fern.
I have two
Are you
ferns.
between two ferns right
I
now?
have two yucca plants. I am between two ferns.
So that's an interesting way of pivoting that idea, I think, is
Okay, but if you make it only about adopting a dog, right? What keeps people coming back after
Bumble
they have
says
adopted the dog?
it wants to be
And
deleted.
for me,
right? Yeah.
that's what I'm getting at. Is like after you get a girlfriend, right? You're supposed to delete
to.
Bumble, but then you go through like this period of withdrawal where you're like, God damn it, I enjoyed the
So
swiping
that's where you
and
switch
touching
to
people.
only dogs. You pivot. Once you find a girlfriend
Yeah,
or
you
boyfriend,
still got the muscle memory.
it's time to start swiping on dogs.
Now it's the next step. You got to get a dog together.
And then think about how many verticals there are here. I mean, there's only dogs, there's only cats, there's only snakes, there's
No,
only
it's only dogs.
elephants,
We only want dogs.
only
Dogs are
horses.
better than all of those.
Come on.
Only horses. That gets dark. Oh man, I just had a really great idea for it. Yeah. I mean, I think it would be okay. So here's what. Yeah, Bumble. Like, let's say you're deleting Bumble. Do a cross promotion with Bumble. Bumble says, "Hey, you're deleting. You found love. How about a dog? Download only dogs. Boom. And it goes to ASPCA, right? That's nonprofit stuff.
No, exactly.
Hook 'em.
No, there's a sweet partnership there.
Oh yeah.
I think, I mean, one of the challenges that I would find, now to be really cynical about how human psychology works, I think that there would probably feel like there's too much commitment on swiping right on a dog, right? So I think most everybody's just going to swipe left because they're like, well, I don't want 100 options of dogs I would adopt. I also can't donate to 100 different dogs and support them financially. So you would kind of just burn out on just feeling like too much burden and too much responsibility on it. So you'd need to find a way to inject some fun, right, and some play into it. And
you would have to do a slight pivot on the Tinder UI model, right? Because creating a match, like you're just hoping, like, hey, I hope, versus like having favorites or something like you'd have to there would be something you'd have to do with that interface, evolve it a little bit. You couldn't just duplicate it, otherwise.
No, because Tinder and Bumble, I mean, you're basically playing like a volume game, right? Where it's just like the more I swipe right, the higher the likelihood that somebody on the other end
Brian
is
Jones
also
saw
going
me
to. Right, so it's like the same. Like if you swipe right on a dog, you already know. If you already knew that, okay, well now someone on the other end is actually going to look into me. It's like the likelihood of a match is dramatically different in this thing, so you'd need to adjust the UX of it.
Was it one of our buddies who went through?
We had exactly opposite. We had exactly opposite Bumble strategies. You swiped right on everybody, and I swiped right on like one.
But wasn't it one of our buddies at Twigs had set up a bot for OkCupid to go through and click on everybody's profiles because he knew that it populated them? Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I wasn't gonna throw him out there.
Nick did that. Yeah.
Listening. That's how he found his girlfriend or
Oh,
something.
I will. It was Nick. Yeah, he's brilliant. If you're looking to hire a good developer, you should hire Nick because he's really
he
good.
built a bot that clicked through everybody's profiles because he knew that it would show up on their profiles as being seen, and he didn't care who it was. He was playing the volume game, and he said, I only want to filter through the matches. Why do I want to filter through the not matches? And I was like, that makes sense. And then I just started swiping myself. I didn't have a bot. I had a finger to work with. But okay. So I'm buying it. Yeah, you couldn't directly do every swipe as a dog adopted, auto adopt feature or something like that. That would get insane. Especially you get some wine into some women, they would order a bunch of dogs real quick.
Yeah, I think you almost got to kind of gamify it. So like make the adoption thing part of it. I'm interested in adopting this dog, but the other thing is like almost make it a mashup of that, right? Like match me with a dog, and then Hot or Not, but for dogs.
Yeah,
remember the website Hot or Not?
It was a 7
where you would just vote
for.
Yeah, do that for dogs, and then show everybody, like the results. Like, oh, this dog got 140 likes and 2 left swipes. And
man, you're gonna feel real bad for some dogs, man.
Then like show rankings and stuff. Exactly. So you get people that are swiping through and they're like, what do you mean that dog only has 3 upvotes?
Yeah, they'd be
And
like,
then they just
I'll
have to
love
swipe.
him.
And then the next dog,
I'll
right,
give
they
him
just
a
have to swipe.
home. No one loves him. He's so ugly.
Yeah.
It's like he
There
gets
you
so
go.
ugly, he becomes cute again, right? That whole thing.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think like on
So-
an overall rating for me, I don't know what kind of scoring system we come up with for this snark tank here. I think for me, I would say I don't know that I would dive in just yet on building something, but I think it is worth exploring more.
How would you explore more? What would you do next? What would your next step be?
Well, because I know that
I would ask-
a lot of shelters, I mean, they list their dogs online, right? And they list them with all kinds of filters, so you can kind of search and all that kind of stuff.
Boom, scraping data.
Exactly.
Right
So
there.
so maybe you go around scraping and putting together a little bit of a prototype and asking your friends kind of what they think about the experience. Because I have a lot of reservation about the swipe right, swipe left on this kind of for
That
this
would be
kind
the
of
mechanic
human
to get right.
psychology. Yeah, you have to find some way. So how often do you inject just some hilarious video of a dog, that you found on Reddit doing something funny just to entertain the dog people, versus then how often do you inject a dog that is in desperate need of, legs amputation or something that needs sponsorship or whatever it is, right? So you got to really balance that.
Oh man, I can just see somebody, if you actually did like swipe right and you're funding dogs who need surgery. I'm just imagining some sorority girl getting drunk and just swiping through and just sponsoring all the dogs with their daddy's credit card or something like that.
Hey, I got no problem with that.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, that's going to a good cause.
Learning has
Let's put it
occurred.
that way. Yeah.
I'm with Aaron. I would not dive in and start building it right now, but I would definitely ask GitHub. You guys are telling me that all I got to do is like write a comment in my editor, build Bumble Bud for dogs, and it will create the whole app for me.
So what would your next step be, Jones? If someone pitches you idea and you're like, all right, what would you do next?
I think what I would do is kind of the same thing as Aaron. So I would test the idea, and I would kind of, like you said, I think it's very important to get the mechanics right? Because the thing Bumble and Tinder had was they were
Gambling.
addictive, right? Because you would just swipe, and there was another person
That you get to
another
have
person,
sex
another
with.
person, right?
Yeah.
Potentially, and that's like you got to find the same mechanic for the pets
That you don't
for the
have sex
dogs,
with.
right? So whatever levers you're going to tweak there.
That is for
At
only
least not in
horses.
47
Save it.
states. I believe there's- You've got to get the levers right. You've got to tweak the levers so that the app is as engaging as Tinder and Bumble. And I think you're right that it's not going to be a precise duplication of those apps. So the first thing to do is to figure out what setting those levers have to be on.
So just
and then
to
build the app.
leverage its original name, the Only Dogs, I was imagining it more like a model of OnlyFans, right? Which is you find dogs that you want to be a fan of. So the mechanic on OnlyFans is there is no swipe right or swipe left. You just discover based on some hot chick you found on Instagram or someone on Reddit or
is
whatever.
Frozen in time.
Womp womp. Aaron's really struggling today.
I know he's real passionate about his OnlyFans. So, fun fact, Aaron is the one that got all of our OnlyFans intros. I don't know if we've talked about this, but the first one he sent over was a dude. And I think Brian and I went, wait a second, that's not exactly what we had in mind.
Yeah. Well, I think Aaron's very valuable point. We'll just have to wait because we have a new thing.
Yeah. Well, so before I push the
hit
button,
the new thing? Are we
I
going to
think
explain
that
the new
just
thing?
to explain to anybody, so we have segment ideas coming up, things that we want to do. So, for example, Snark Tank, anything that you see, we'll be taking user submissions. So definitely reach out to us on Twitter or email if you have an idea, or you just think it's a funny idea that you have while you're doing some mushrooms or marijuana. And you jot it down and send it to us. Or who's that guy who sent us that really long drunk email? I thought that was amazing. He's like, I got a thick
I don't
blunt, and
remember.
I'm like, I got a bottle of Jack.
Oh, yeah.
So if you're in
guy.
that state, you want to email us an idea, we'll take that on. We have a couple other segments ideas I think we'll pitch you guys as we go through the show. So if there's anything you want us to take a look at for any of these things, just let us know. And Aaron's back just in time to wrap up the show as Zoom connects him slowly. So
I think you're gonna have to get your internet checked.
It's literally Zoom crashes every time. Everything else is working totally fine on my computer. Just all of a sudden, Zoom just dies. Well, and what's worse is I could hear you guys, and I'm like, wait, I didn't know I cut out.
We just go.
This whole new version of Unmuzzled is going perfectly.
At least I didn't screw it up. It was on my side. I thought I'd screw stuff up.
The fuck.
Yeah.
So.
Good news. Briquette was just about to hit the button, so you're back just in time for the big reveal. Well, it's that awkward stage of the show where your phone is stuck in your pocket and you're stuck listening to the outro. When you finally get it out of there, do us a favor. Text a friend, send them to unmuzzled.fm, and tell them to check out the show. We would love to have them as a listener. Then swing by Twitter. We are at unmuzzledfm there, and we'll reply to you personally. Tell us what you think. Thanks so much for listening, and thank you for doing whatever you do that drives humanity forward. We'll see you soon.